Have you ever trusted someone entirely only to discover they betrayed you in the worst way possible? What would you do if the two people you believed you could trust the most turned out to be the biggest deceivers? In today's video, I'll tell you the shocking story of how I discovered my girlfriend cheating on me with my boss and how I turned the tables to get them both fired. You will not want to miss the heart-wrenching ending. Let's dive in. Let me start by saying that every girl in my life has hurt me, from my mother to my cheating girlfriend and everyone in between. I met my girlfriend Lori 6 years ago while working at a restaurant in Portland. She was a hostess, and I was the server. She was new to the area, having moved from Connecticut. Because everyone worked at the restaurant, we were in the same friend group and naturally became friends. Let me pause here to be honest with myself. While I am imperfect and have made mistakes, I will be the first to admit it. I made mistakes in this relationship, but I still consider myself to be a good guy. Anyway, back to the story. My mother was battling ovarian cancer when we were just friends and colleagues. Unfortunately, she passed away. I have to admit that even before her death, dealing with her illness was difficult for me, even though we did not have the best relationship. Despite putting on a happy face, I was struggling, and sex became my coping mechanism. As an attractive man, I never had trouble finding a partner. It was simply a way to get out of my head and enjoy a moment with someone else while forgetting about my life. But that is a story for another time. After my mother died, I felt as if I was losing myself mentally, and I desperately wanted to end my life. My mother abandoned my abusive father and me when I was around 4 years old, so I was raised by him and my stepmother after he remarried shortly after that. Although my mother attempted to re-enter my life when I was a teenager, we were never able to repair our relationship fully. Losing her broke something inside of me. I felt like I never had the opportunity to talk about the things that bothered me, forgive, and find the closure I needed. I share this to provide context for my emotional state at the time. During my grief over my mother's death, I attempted to numb the pain by using women. I guess I was looking for the void she had left behind. That's how I met the woman who would become the mother of my children. Not the cheating girlfriend, just to be precise. We got engaged, but our relationship eventually ended because I told her lies about myself. No, I was not cheating on her. However, in my desperate attempt to win her over, I painted a false picture of myself, which eventually led to our demise. Let's say I had a sex addiction and wasn't completely open about it. Anyway, after the engagement ended, I went through a rough patch. Not only did I struggle with depression, but also my constantly changing living situation and a friend from work who turned out deceitful. Moving from one rented room to another, I never achieved stability. It wasn't because I couldn't afford the rent, but because of problems with the people I was renting from. The final straw was when the phony friend brandished a knife at me over a bill. This is the same person who tried to set me up with my cheating girlfriend, Lori. I initially resisted for a variety of reasons. I was still trying to make things work with my child's mother, and I wasn't particularly drawn to Lori at first. It may appear shallow, but she wasn't my type. However, Lori was one of my closest friends at the time. She was always there for me. She helped me get through the pain of losing my mother, and after my fake friend and ex-roommate threatened me with a knife over a stupid bill, she let me move in with her. Otherwise, I was going to sleep in my car, and she said she couldn't stand it. Despite my best efforts, I was unable to repair the relationship with my children's mother. Over a few years, one child became biologically mine, and the other did not. But I took the initiative to care for her eldest child as if it were my own. While I am not perfect, I am confident that I am a good person for doing so. However, things changed when I allowed myself to start sleeping with Lori, who had feelings for me that I initially did not reciprocate. At the time, I needed that intimacy, and I liked that she was interested in me. Honestly, despite telling her from the start that dating would ruin our friendship, we eventually got together. My ex-fiancé found out and was upset because I was technically pursuing her, or at least attempting to work things out. Looking back, I wonder if it was because I had given up on finding happiness in life and accepted what was presented to me. I should have tried harder with my children's mother, but part of me knows she was too good for me in the first place and did not deserve what I put her through. In retrospect, I regret ever sleeping with Lori, but I can't change the past and have to admit that I was dealing with my demons at the time. Before I get too deep into the story, I'd like to provide some context for when everything fell apart. It was before we were even officially a couple. Lori and I were just friends, and I was staying at her house after the knife incident with my phony friend, and she was quietly seeing a married co-worker from her second job while I was attempting to reconcile with my child's mother. Eventually, sex became involved between me and Lori, and I considered being with her. I kept asking if she was serious about being with me because she'd say, "I'm only staying in Portland to see where things are going between you and me." Then she'd have to stop seeing the other guy. Let us call him Joe. She eventually became pregnant. She said it was Joe's, but I suspect it was mine. Anyway, she had an abortion. Joe, Lori, and a female friend returned to their apartment on the day of the abortion. Her friend ended up coming into our room and cuddling with me while my girlfriend, who was cheating on me but we weren't officially dating, cried and sobbed on Joe's shoulder in the living room. This irritated me because I had already expressed my feelings for him even though we weren't serious, and I was trying to work things out with my children's mother. It irritated me, but I ended up driving her friend home. We ended up hanging out for 2 to 3 hours before I left to smoke weed and get a little shaky at my best friend's house. Several months later, Lori and we'd moved into a new basement suite together. She had issues with her previous roommate, and the high cost of living in Portland made it challenging to find a new place. One night, after a routine shift at the restaurant, I returned to the basement suite, but realized I didn't have a key, so I knocked on the door. I could hear sounds coming from inside, but there was no response. When she arrived, I had been pounding on the door for at least 20 minutes in my band tee and a small pair of black pants. To my surprise, but not really, the married man I had told her I didn't want around was in our suite. He must have rushed to put his clothes back on, but his face was flushed, and he appeared sweaty as if they had just worked hard. They didn't hear me at the door because she was playing him one of the vinyl records she had just purchased. Yeah, BS. When I knocked on the door, there wasn't a single piece of music playing in the suite, just the sweet, sweet music of her cheating heart. This was the last straw. How could I possibly trust this woman again? I told her I knew exactly what they were doing because I could hear it all from outside after spending the entire day at the restaurant. That last part was a lie, but I wanted to make her feel even worse than she did. He tried to tell me that nothing happened, and then I said, "My girlfriend is standing in front of me with nothing but a t-shirt and pants, and she's been alone with you in there for however long, and you've already knocked her up once. I'm having a hard time believing that nothing happened between you." "Get lost," he said, hurrying out. "I know what you're thinking. Well, you weren't really into her from the beginning. Love is strange. It snuck up on me with her. I had thought of her as only a friend, perhaps someone with whom I could get my rocks off now and then, but she ended up taking up space in my heart that felt warm and possibly what I had been missing my entire life. I felt my shell soften, as if she were healing a part of me that needed it. But in any case, she kept trying to convince me that things were truly over between her and him after I caught them together, but I couldn't bring myself to believe her. Whenever I mentioned possibly ending their friendship, she would push back and say, "You can't control who I'm friends with." This was a huge red flag for me. Men and women can't simply be friends if they have a history of intimacy. There will always be an underlying desire between men and women. Despite this, I stayed, and as time passed, I frequently changed jobs. With 2 young children from my previous relationship to care for, I needed a more stable career, and the restaurant wasn't paying me enough. Not only that, but there was also a lot of drama in the restaurant's friend group. After a while, I wanted to get away from it. By this point, my ex-fiancé had married someone else, but Lori was able to help me get a job at the same company where she worked. Yes, I attempted to work it out with her because I felt I had let my ex-fiancé down by not working hard enough with her, and something in me refused to give up. Perhaps it was just my ego. Anyway, she assisted me in obtaining this position at this prestigious private school where Joe also worked. Still, we were initially assigned to different departments, so it didn't bother me much. I wouldn't mind if he avoided me and Lori. The money was too good to pass up. I believed things were improving. Toward the end of my first year at the new job, they transferred me to a different building, and my surprise, Joe was my immediate supervisor. Great. He offered me a position that required me to work immediately, with technical setups. I told him to notify me if anything suspicious happened. This was a massive relief for me because I felt like I wasn't going insane and that someone else was also keeping an eye on things. One evening, while Lori was supposedly out with her girlfriends again, my neighbor texted me and said he had something I needed to see. I went over, and he showed me a video of Joe Schmo sneaking into my home. I could not believe it. It was one thing to have suspicions, but seeing the evidence in front of me was devastating. I confronted Lori that night when she returned home. At first, she tried to deny everything, claiming Joe was there to pick up something for work. However, when I showed her the video, she burst into tears and admitted that she had been seeing Joe all along. My entire world seemed to crumble around me. I had trusted her even though I had my doubts. Despite this, I tried to remain calm. I needed to think about my children and how to handle the situation without making matters worse for them. I informed Lori that we were finished and that I would be moving out as soon as I found a place. She pleaded with me to stay, saying she was sorry and would end things with Joe, but I couldn't take it any longer. The trust had been irreparably broken. I immediately began looking for a new place, turning to friends and family for assistance. I also started looking for a lawyer to discuss my children's custody arrangements. I didn't want to uproot their lives more than necessary, but I knew I needed to provide a stable environment for them. Within a few weeks, I found a small apartment near my children's school. It wasn't much, but it provided a fresh start. I moved out quietly, taking only what I needed and leaving everything that reminded me of my life with Lori. The first few months were difficult. I missed my children terribly when they weren't with me, and I had to get used to a new routine. But gradually, things began to improve. I focused on my job and worked hard to provide for my children. I also spent quality time with them whenever possible, making up for lost time. Looking back, I realized I had been holding on to something that was never truly present. Lori was a lifeline for me during a trying time, but she was not the partner I needed or deserved. It took a lot of pain and heartbreak to realize that, but in the end, it strengthened me. Now, I'm more cautious about who I allow into my life and around my children. I've learned to trust my instincts and appreciate myself more. I may have lost a lot, but I gained a sense of self-worth and the determination to create a better future for myself and my children. Her actions also had consequences. While she wasn't fired immediately, her hours were significantly reduced, and she was put on a performance improvement plan due to her inappropriate relationship with Joe Schmo. I felt relieved knowing that there would be consequences for their deceitful behavior. Moving forward, I concentrated on settling into my new job at the security firm. My former fiancé's husband was incredibly supportive, and the latest job gave me a more balanced schedule to spend time with my children. I was grateful and determined to make the most of the opportunity. Despite the upheaval, I found comfort in the stability I established for myself and my children. I began attending therapy to work through the emotional scars left by Lori's betrayal and the chaos of the previous few years. It helped me regain clarity and self-esteem. As time passed, I reconnected with old friends and met new ones through work and my children's school. I even began dating again, albeit cautiously, taking things slowly and putting my children's well-being first. I learned to trust again, with greater awareness and self-respect. Looking back, I realized that my painful experiences with Lori and Joe Schmo were a harsh but necessary catalyst for positive change in my life. They forced me to reconsider my priorities, take charge of my situation, and lay a solid foundation for my future. Today, I'm in a much better place. My children are doing well, and I am proud of my personal and professional achievements. The lessons I learned have made me more resilient and grateful for the genuine connections in my life. I'm thankful for my support system and the opportunity to start over, free of the toxic relationships that previously held me back. It feels like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders. I'm in a much better emotional and mental state now, and I can see how it's helped my children. They are happier, and our bond has grown stronger. My ex-fiancé and I have developed a solid friendship ideal for our co-parenting dynamic. We communicate effectively and support each other in raising our children. It's reassuring to know that, despite our differences, we can work together to ensure our children's happiness and well-being. I'm doing great at my new job. The environment is encouraging, and I feel valued and appreciated for my efforts. The work is challenging but rewarding, and I understand its stability. The flexible hours allow me to spend more time with my children, which is extremely valuable. I've also prioritized self-improvement and self-care. Therapy has been extremely helpful in processing my past and developing a more positive outlook on life. I've started exercising more frequently, eating healthier, and pursuing hobbies I had neglected for too long. These changes have significantly improved my overall well-being. In terms of relationships, I'm taking it slow. I am open to possibly falling in love again, but I am also cautious about maintaining healthy boundaries. Trust has to be rebuilt gradually, and I am okay with that. For now, my primary focus is on my children, career, and personal development. Reflecting on everything, I realize my difficulties were necessary for my growth and development. They taught me valuable lessons about resilience, self-worth, and surrounding oneself with supportive and trustworthy people. I am grateful for my current situation and optimistic about the future. Overall, I feel good. Life is not perfect, but I am content and at ease with its direction. My children are happy, and I'm leading a stable and fulfilling life. I've also learned to value myself and my well-being. For the first time in a long time, I'm optimistic and excited about what lies ahead. Wow, this is quite the saga. It takes a certain amount of self-awareness to admit my mistakes amid chaos. Who hasn't battled their demons or made questionable decisions in pursuing happiness? Then there's Lori, the hostess turned heartbreaker, the friend turned adversary. She was there through thick and thin, but the fine line between friendship and infidelity was too tempting to cross. Dear Lori, the femme fatale. It's as if she's straight out of a film noir, luring unsuspecting victims with charm before pulling the rug out from under them. But she did get her comeuppance in the end, right? Karma has a funny way of catching up with you, especially if you play fast and loose with other people's hearts. But admittedly, I gave her far too many second chances. And Joe, what a character, slithering his way into our hearts and our workplace like a snake through the grass. Unfortunately, even the smoothest operators can't avoid the long arm of justice, as evidenced by his quick dismissal. Hello, everyone. As a creator, I have a dream and need your help to make it a reality. I want 1,000 subscribers on my channel, but first I need to reach a smaller goal of 100 subscribers. Will you contribute to helping me achieve that goal? Let's make this dream a reality.